Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window of the transport shuttle and watched the massive space station grow larger. Station 7 looked like a giant metal flower with spinning arms that stretched out in all directions. Lights blinked along its surface like stars, and ships moved around it like tiny insects. "First time seeing a galactic academy?" asked the pilot, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "Pretty impressive, right?" Jake nodded but didn't say anything. He had learned that talking too much usually got him in trouble. Better to watch and listen first. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Jake picked up his single bag and followed the other passengers out. The station's main hall was huge, with a ceiling so high he couldn't see the top. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked around, talking in languages that sounded like music, clicks, or grinding metal. A tall woman in a blue uniform approached him. "You must be Jake Morrison. I'm Commander Lisa Hayes, the human liaison here." She looked him up and down, taking in his simple jeans and t-shirt. "Welcome to Galactic Academy Station 7. "Thank you, ma'am," Jake said quietly. "Come on, I'll show you around before orientation starts." As they walked through the halls, Commander Hayes pointed out different areas. "That's the dining hall. It serves food for over 200 different species. Those are the academic wings: physics, chemistry, biology, and diplomatic studies. And over there are the dormitories." Jake noticed everything: the security cameras in the corners, the emergency exits marked with glowing symbols, the way different groups of aliens stayed together and avoided others, the thick windows that showed the stars outside. "The academy has been running for over 200 years, Hayes continued. "Students come here from all over the galaxy to learn. You're the first human we've ever accepted." They entered a large room filled with young aliens. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled when they moved. Others had scales and long tails. A few seemed to be made of flowing energy that barely held a shape. The room went quiet when Jake walked in. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at him. He felt his face get hot but kept walking. "Everyone, this is Jake Morrison from Earth," Commander Hayes announced. "He'll be joining us this semester." A tall crystal being stepped forward. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Zephyr Prime of the Crystalline Collective. I must ask, why has the Academy accepted a student from such a primitive world?" Other students murmured agreement. Jake heard words like backwards and barely spacefaring in the mix of alien languages. "Earth only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago," continued Zephyr Prime. "My people have been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. What could this human possibly contribute?" Jake looked around the room. Every alien face showed the same expression: curiosity mixed with contempt. He had seen that look before. In school back on Earth, when he was the new kid who didn't fit in. "I'm here to learn," Jake said simply. A huge reptilian alien laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Learn? You can barely speak properly. I am Thrakener of the Saurian Empire. My people conquered 17 star systems before your species invented the wheel." More laughter rippled through the room. Jake felt his hands clench into fists then. Force them to relax. Getting angry wouldn't help. It never did. "That's enough," Commander Hayes said sharply. Jake earned his place here through the same tests as everyone else. "Tests designed for civilized species," muttered someone in the crowd. Dr. Alan Cooper, a middle-aged human with gray hair, approached them. "Don't mind them, Jake. They'll come around once they get to know you." Jake wasn't so sure. He had been the outsider plenty of times before. Military families moved a lot, and he had learned that being the new kid meant being the target. At least, until something else caught everyone's attention. The orientation continued with a tour of the academic facilities. Jake walked at the back of the group, watching how the other students interacted. The crystal beings formed tight clusters and spoke in musical tones. The reptilian student stood tall and made aggressive gestures. The energy beings flickered in and out of view, sometimes disappearing completely. "Your dormitory assignment," Commander Hayes said, handing Jake a small tablet. "You'll be in Level C, Section 12. It's near the maintenance areas, but it's quiet." Jake looked at the assignment. Level C was the lowest level, he realized, where they put the students who didn't matter. "The dining hall serves meals at standard galactic time," Dr. Cooper explained. "Don't worry about the food. There are human options available. And my office is always open if you need anything." That evening, Jake found his room. It was small, but clean, with a bed, desk, and viewing port that looked out at the stars. He unpacked his few belongings and sat on the bed. His tablet chimed with his class schedule. Basic mathematics, elementary physics, introduction to galactic history. All beginner courses, despite the advanced placement tests he had taken back. On Earth, a group of students walked past his door, talking loudly. "Did you see the human today? So quiet and scared looking. I heard humans are barely intelligent. They still fight wars on their home planet. Disgusting, truly primitive behavior." Jake listened until their voices faded away. He had heard worse things said about him, but it still stung. He got up and walked to the window, looking out at the vast space station that tomorrow would bring new challenges. He would sit in classes where he was the only human, eat meals where other students avoided him, try to fit in with species that saw him as beneath them. But that was okay. Jake had learned long ago that being underestimated could be useful. While others made noise and demanded attention, he could watch and learn. He could figure out how things really worked. He opened his tablet and began reading about the station's layout, emergency procedures, security protocols, maintenance schedules, information that most students probably ignored. Outside his window, the stars wheeled slowly as the station rotated. Jake Morrison, the quiet human boy from Earth, settled in to begin his real education. Not the one the academy would teach him, but the one he would teach himself, the one that might someday save all their lives. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison arrived at Station 7. Every morning he woke up, attended his basic classes, ate lunch alone, and spent his afternoons in the station's archives. The other students had stopped staring at him. Now, they simply acted like he wasn't there at all. Jake preferred it that way. In his elementary physics class, Professor Vextar explained concepts that Jake had learned in middle school back on Earth. The 8-legged spider-like alien spoke slowly, as if teaching children. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only changed from one form to another. Zephyr Prime raised a crystalline hand. "Professor, why must we review such basic concepts? Surely we can move to quantum mechanics. Some students need more time to understand," Professor Vextar said, looking directly at Jake. Jake kept his face blank and took notes. He had learned not to react when they talked about him like he wasn't there. Instead, he watched how each species behaved. The crystal beings, like Zephyr Prime, always showed off their knowledge. The reptilian saurians, like Thrakener, used physical displays to dominate conversations. The energy beings, called ethereal, simply faded away when things got boring. After class, Jake walked to the archives. The librarian was an ancient turtle-like creature called Keeper Moldon. She had been at the station for over 50 years and knew everything about everyone. "Back again, young human?" she asked in her slow, deep voice. "What are you researching today?" "Galactic history," Jake said. "Specifically, how different species handle conflict." Keeper Moldon's large eyes blinked slowly. "An unusual topic for a first-year student. Most prefer to study technology or science," Jake shrugged. "I find it interesting." He settled into his usual corner and pulled up files on his tablet. Over the past months, he had learned fascinating things about the galaxy's major species. The Crystalline Collective had never fought a war in their 10,000-year history. They solved all problems through logic and debate. The Saurian Empire looked fierce and aggressive, but their conquests were actually peaceful negotiations, where they intimidated other species into joining them voluntarily. The Ethereal Federation had the most interesting approach when faced with any serious problem. They simply moved to a different dimension until it went away. They called it strategic phase shifting. Every advanced species in the galaxy had evolved past the need for actual violence. Wars were things that happened to primitive civilizations that hadn't learned better ways to solve problems. Peace and cooperation were signs of true advancement. Jake thought about Earth's history. The wars, the weapons, the constant struggle for survival. By galactic standards, humans were barbarians. No wonder the other students looked down on him. His tablet chimed with a message from Dr. Cooper. "Jake, please come to my office. We need to talk." Jake found the human professor grading papers. Dr. Cooper looked up with concern in his eyes. "Sit down, son. How are you adjusting to life on the station?" "Fine, sir." "Really?" "Because Commander Hayes is worried about you. She says you're becoming too isolated. The other students don't interact with you at all." Jake nodded. "That's how they want it. But that's not how it should be," Dr. Cooper said. "You're representing all of humanity here. Don't you want to show them what humans can accomplish?" "I'm learning a lot," Jake said truthfully. "From your basic classes?" "Jake, I've seen your test scores from Earth. You could be taking advanced courses, but you're stuck in elementary level classes because the administration thinks humans aren't ready for complex subjects." Jake had known that. He had also known that complaining about it wouldn't change anything. Better to use the time to learn other things. "I'm learning about galactic culture," Jake said. "How different species think and act. It's important." Dr. Cooper sighed. "Maybe so, but you need to be more assertive. Stand up for yourself. Show them that humans deserve respect." After leaving the professor's office, Jake walked through the recreational areas. Groups of students practiced holographic sports, played complex strategy games, or simply socialized. None of them looked at him as he passed. Near the observation deck, he found Threkener and several other Saurian students surrounding a smaller alien. The victim was a young crystalline named Luxara, who often sat near Jake in basic mathematics. "Your people think they're so smart," Threkener was saying, his voice a low growl. "But you can't even understand simple dominant structures." Luxara's crystal body flickered with nervous light. "Please, I just want to study." "Study this," Threkener said, grabbing Luxara's datapad and crushing it in his large hands. The device sparked and went dark. Jake stopped walking. The rational part of his mind said to keep moving. This wasn't his problem. Getting involved would only bring unwanted attention, but Luxara reminded him of kids back on Earth who got picked on by bullies, kids who just wanted to be left alone to do their work. "Hey," Jake said quietly. Threkener turned, surprised. "The human speaks. How unusual. Leave him alone." The Saurian students laughed. Threkener stepped closer to Jake, using his 7-foot height to loom over the human boy. "Or what? You'll report me to the administrators? Tell your human friends?" Jake looked up at the reptilian alien. Threkenor's species had evolved from pack hunters, but they had been civilized for thousands of years. Their aggressive displays were mostly for show. They expected others to back down when faced with superior size and strength. "I'm asking nicely," Jake said. "How pathetic," Threkener sneered. He reached out and shoved Jake backward. "Your species is so weak. No wonder. You're confined to one primitive planet." Jake felt something old and familiar wake up inside him. The same feeling he got when bigger kids tried to push him around on Earth. His father had taught him that sometimes backing down just made things worse. But this wasn't Earth. This was a civilized galactic academy where conflicts were resolved through discussion and mediation. Violence was the mark of primitive species. Jake took a deep breath and let the feeling pass. "Sorry for bothering you," he said, and walked away. Behind him, Thrakener's laughter echoed through the corridor. That night, Jake found his personal belongings scattered across his room floor. His clothes were shredded. His few photographs from Earth were torn in half. A message was written on his mirror in some kind of alien marking fluid. "Know your place, human." Jake cleaned up the mess without reporting it. He carefully taped his photographs back together and put them away safely. Then he sat at his desk and made a list of everything he had observed about saurian behavior patterns over the past 3 months. Their aggression was mostly bluster. They were pack hunters who relied on intimidation rather than actual fighting. They expected their victims to submit or flee, because that's how conflicts worked in their civilized society. Jake wondered what they would do if they met someone who didn't follow those rules. Someone from a species that had learned to fight. Back when cornered, he hoped he would never have to find out. The alarm started screaming at 0347 station time. Jake woke up instantly, his body already moving before his mind caught up. Years of military base life had taught him that alarms meant danger. Red lights flashed in the corridors as he stepped out of his room. Other students stumbled out of their dormitories, looking confused and frightened. The station's speakers crackled with static, then Commander Hayes' voice came through. "All students report to designated safe areas immediately. This is not a drill. We have a code red emergency." Jake didn't run toward the safe areas like the other students. Instead, he moved toward the nearest observation window. Outside, he could see the twisted wreckage of a large transport ship embedded in the station's main docking bay. Sparks flew from broken electrical systems, and atmosphere was venting into space through holes in the hull. "What happened?" asked Luxara, the young crystalline who Jake had tried to help weeks earlier. She was standing nearby, her crystal body flickering with nervous energy. "Ship crash," Jake said simply. "Big one." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds. Later, bathing everything in dim red light. Jake's mind automatically cataloged the problems this would cause. Limited power meant limited life support. Damage to docking bay meant no easy way to evacuate, and something else was wrong. The air felt different somehow. A new sound echoed through the corridors. A low hunting call that made the hair on Jake's arms stand up. He had heard similar sounds before, during camping trips with his father in the mountains. Predators calling to each other. "Everyone stay calm," came Dr. Cooper's voice over the intercom. "We're experiencing some technical difficulties, but security has everything under control." Jake doubted that. He had spent months studying the station's security protocols. They were designed to handle accidents, equipment failures, and disputes between species. They weren't designed to handle actual threats. Hunting call came again, closer this time. Several students screamed. Jake saw something move in the shadows at the end of the corridor. Something big, with too many legs and eyes that reflected the emergency lighting. "Void Stalker," whispered an ethereal student before phase shifting into another dimension, or trying to. The student flickered but remained solid, panic clear in their energy form. "The reality anchors are damaged. I can't phase out." Jake had read about Void Stalkers in the archives. They were apex predators from death worlds, sometimes captured for research. They hunted by scent and sound, could see in almost complete darkness, and were immune to most energy weapons. The transport ship must have been carrying specimens that were released in the crash. The creature at the end of the hall let out another call. This time, Jake heard answers from other parts of the station. Multiple creatures, a pack. "We need to get to the safe areas," said Zephyr Prime, his crystalline voice shaking. "Security will protect us there." Jake shook his head. "Security's dead. These things are hunters. They'll go where the most prey is gathered." "How do you know that?" demanded Threkanur, who was trying to look brave but failing. His aggressive posturing meant nothing to a real predator. "Because that's what I would do," Jake said quietly. The Void Stalker moved closer. In the red emergency lighting, Jake could see its true size. 8 feet tall, covered in dark armor-like skin, with claws that could tear through metal. Its multiple eyes locked onto the group of students. The alien students did what their species had evolved to do. The crystallines tried to reason with it, speaking in their musical language. The saurians made threat displays, puffing up their bodies and showing their teeth. The ethereals attempted to phase shift repeatedly, becoming more panicked when it didn't work. The Void Stalker ignored all of it. It had found prey, and prey was meant to be eaten. "Everyone back up slowly," Jake said. "Don't run. Don't make sudden movements." "Why should we listen to you?" Thrakenor snarled. "You're just a primitive human." The Void Stalker's head snapped toward Thrakenor at the sound. In that moment, Jake saw what was going to happen. The creature would leap. Thrakenor would try to fight it using dominance displays that worked on other saurians, but meant nothing to a real predator. People would. Jake stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and the other students. "Hey," he said softly, the Void Stalker's eyes fixed on him. Jake could see intelligence there, but not the kind that could be reasoned with. This was a predator's intelligence, focused entirely on killing. "That's right," Jake said, his voice calm and steady. "Look at me." He began backing up slowly, leading the creature away from the group. The Void Stalker followed, its attention completely focused on the human boy who wasn't showing fear or aggression, just watchfulness. "What are you doing?" Luxara whispered. "Buying time," Jake said. "When I say run, you all go to the maintenance tunnels. Level D, Section 7. There's a security checkpoint there with manual locks." "How do you know about the maintenance tunnels?" asked Zephyr Prime. "I pay attention," Jake replied. "Now run." The students scattered in different directions. The Void Stalker tensed to pursue them, but Jake did something that stopped it cold. He didn't run. Instead, he stared directly into the creature's eyes and smiled. It was the smile of something that wasn't afraid. Something that was evaluating the creature right back. For the first time in its life, the Void Stalker found itself looking at prey that might actually be dangerous. Jake continued backing away, leading the creature deeper into the station's maintenance areas. Behind him, he could hear more hunting calls echoing through the corridors. The pack was spreading out, searching for prey. But this one was his now. "Come on then," Jake said quietly. "Let's see what you've got." Commander Hayes' voice crackled over the intercom system. "All personnel, we have multiple hostile creatures loose on the station. Evacuation procedures are in effect, but the main shuttle bay is compromised. We need alternate routes to the emergency pods." Jake smiled again. He had spent months mapping every maintenance tunnel, every forgotten access way, every emergency system on the station. Information that the other students had ignored while they focused on their advanced studies. The Void Stalker took a step forward, its claws scraping against the metal floor. Jake took a step back, deeper into the maze of corridors that he knew better than anyone. "You want to hunt?" Jake whispered. "Good, so do I." For the first time since arriving at Station 7, Jake Morrison felt like himself. Not the quiet, overlooked human boy who was beneath everyone's notice. Not the primitive representative of a backward species. He felt like what he really was. A predator from a world where only the strong survived, where his ancestors had clawed their way to the top of the food chain through intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever it took to win. The Void Stalker had made a mistake. It had cornered a human. Jake led the Void Stalker deeper into the maintenance tunnels. His footsteps were silent on the metal grating, a skill learned from years of sneaking around military bases. Behind him, the creature's claws clicked against the floor as it followed. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. Jake knew exactly where he was going. 3 months of exploring had taught him every twist and turn of the forgotten passages. The Void Stalker was following him into a maze that Jake controlled. He stopped at an intersection of 3 tunnels. The creature paused too, sensing something had changed. Jake turned around slowly and looked at his hunter. "You're not the only predator here," Jake said quietly. The Void Stalker tilted its head, confused. Prey didn't usually stop running. Prey didn't stare back with calm, calculating eyes. Jake pulled a maintenance tool from the wall. It was just a heavy wrench, but in his hands it became something else. A weapon. He had learned to fight with whatever was available, a skill that came from growing up around soldiers. The creature lunged. Jake sidestepped at the last second, bringing the wrench down hard on the thing's skull. The impact sent vibrations up his arm, but the creature barely stumbled. Its armor-like skin had protected it from most of the damage. Jake rolled away as claws raked the air where his head had been. He came up running, leading the angry creature through a series of narrow passages. The Void Stalker was bigger and stronger, but Jake was faster and smarter. This was his territory now. He led it into a storage room filled with chemical containers. Jake had studied the station's maintenance systems extensively. He knew what each chemical did, how they reacted with each other, and which ones were dangerous. Void Stalker crashed through the doorway, destroying several containers. Acid spilled across the floor, eating through metal with a hissing sound. The creature leaped over the spreading puddle, but Jake was already gone. Escaped through a ventilation shaft out from the air ducts above. Jake watched the creature search for him. It was frustrated now, making angry sounds as it tried to track his scent. Jake smiled. The chemicals in the air would mask his smell for several minutes. He crawled through the ventilation system to another part of the station. Through the metal grating, he could see other students huddled in what they thought were safe areas. Zephyr Prime was trying to organize them using logic and debate. Threckener was making aggressive displays that meant nothing to real predators. The ethereal students flickered uselessly, unable to phase shift to safety. 2 more Void Stalkers prowled the corridors outside the safe areas. They had found the largest group of prey and were preparing to attack. The students had no idea what was coming. Jake made a decision that would have shocked his classmates. Instead of staying hidden, he dropped down from the air vent right between the students and the approaching predators. "Everyone stay behind me," he said calmly. "Jake?" "Dr. Cooper was among the group." "What are you doing here?" "You should be in the emergency shelters." "The shelters are death traps," Jake replied. "These things hunt in packs. They're driving prey toward the largest groups." One of the Void Stalkers stepped into view. The students behind Jake gasped and pressed back against the wall. But Jake stepped forward, not back. "Luxara," he said without taking his eyes off the creature. "Remember the chemical storage room on level D? The one with the yellow warning signs?" "Yes," the young crystalline replied, voice shaking. "Take everyone there. Use the maintenance tunnels. I'll meet you in 10 minutes. "What about the creatures?" asked Zephyr-Prime. Jake picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor. It had a sharp edge and felt good in his hand. "I'll handle them." "You can't fight those things," Dr. Cooper protested. "You're just a student." Jake looked back at his teacher for a moment. Dr. Cooper saw something in the boy's eyes that he had never noticed before. Something cold and deadly and very, very human. "No," Jake said quietly. "I'm not," the first Void Stalker charged. Jake didn't run. Instead, he did something that no prey animal would ever do. He charged back. The creature's claws swept toward his head. Jake ducked low and drove his makeshift weapon up into the thing's throat. Dark blood sprayed across the walls as the creature screamed in pain and rage. The second Void Stalker tried to attack from behind. Jake spun around, grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, and sprayed chemical foam directly into the creature's eyes. While it was blinded, he brought the heavy metal cylinder down on its skull with both hands. Both creatures were wounded but not dead. They backed away from this strange prey that fought like a predator. Jake stood between them and the fleeing students, breathing hard but ready for more. "That's right," he said. "I'm not what you expected, am I?" The creatures circled him warily. They had never encountered prey that fought back effectively. Their hunting instincts were confused. Jake used that confusion. He led them on a running battle through the station's corridors, using every dirty trick his father had ever taught him. He lured them into areas where the low gravity made their size work against them. He used the station's automated systems to create noise and distractions. He turned their own pack hunting instincts against them by separating them and picking them off one at a time. When Commander Hayes finally reached the chemical storage room with the security team, she found the students safe and unharmed. Jake was sitting calmly against a wall, cleaning alien blood off his hands with a maintenance rag. "The creatures?" Hayes asked. "Dead," Jake replied simply. The security team found the bodies scattered throughout the maintenance levels. Each Void Stalker had been killed with improvised weapons and tactical thinking that impressed even the station's military advisors. In the days that followed, everything changed. The other students looked at Jake with a mixture of respect and fear. They finally understood that humans weren't primitive because they lacked intelligence. They were primitive because they had never needed to evolve beyond their predatory nature. Jake returned to his quiet routine. But now when he walked through the corridors, other students stepped aside. Not out of contempt, but out of instinctive recognition of something dangerous. Zephyr Prime approached him one day in the archives. "I owe you an apology," the crystalline said. "We underestimated your species." "Most people do," Jake replied, not looking up from his studies. "What you did? How did you know how to fight like that?" Jake finally looked at his classmate. "Where I come from, everything wants to kill you. The weather, the animals, the other humans. We learned to be good at killing back, or we died out. Your people evolved past that. Mine didn't." That evening, Jake wrote a message to Earth. He recommended that future human exchange students receive proper briefings about their own capabilities. It was important that both humans and aliens understood what they were truly dealing with. The galaxy was vast and mostly peaceful. But sometimes, peace needed guardians who remembered how to be dangerous. Jake Morrison was no longer just a quiet new kid. He was proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their intelligence. It was their willingness to become monsters when monsters were needed. And in a universe full of wonders and horrors, that was exactly what the galaxy needed to know about the species from Earth.